What's up guys, assalamu alaikum, this is Puya. In this video I'm going to talk about data type conversion. We're going to see how to convert for example a string to an integer and a tuple to a list and so on. So without further ado, let's begin. So the first conversion that we are going to see is converting a string to an integer. For that we use the int class, which converts, for example, an string, convert a number or a string to an integer. It can convert it to an integer, or it returns 0 if no argument are given. For example, it returns 0 like this. Let me call it A so we can do it fast. As you can see, it returns 0 when no argument is given. So then using int class, we can convert strings to integers, and the same applies for a string as well. Using str class, we can convert numbers or anything, almost anything, to strings. Let me show you the docker string. Let's see, create a new string object from the given object. So if you return an object, it gives you a string object, and that object returns the result of object.str. We're going to talk about a special method. So let's just consider if you give it an argument, it returns you the string of that argument. For example, here I gave 10 in this part. 10 is an integer, as you can see, and it simply converts it to a string as well. The type of this variable is a string. The same goes on. We can convert a float to integer. Whatever that comes after a period is removed when you're using integer. As you can see, the value is 10. It doesn't matter if it's 10.36 or 10.99. It simply just removes whatever comes after period to convert it to integer. So, and we can do the opposite. For example, if we have an integer variable, we can convert it to float. And as you can see, when you're printing a float, there is a period. It doesn't matter after period comes 1, 0, or whatever. To explicitly show that this is a float, it uses period to convey the message that this is a float. And the type is float as well. So let's see how to convert sets to tuples. As you can see, to convert sets to tuple, simply we have to pass a set to tuple class. And you can, using shift tab, you can check how to convert items to tuple. It says if no argument is given, the constructor returns an empty tuple. We talked about creating empty set, empty dictionary, and the same goes on for the list, tuple, string, integer. They return an empty, for example, list, an empty tuple. For integers, it returns 0, and for strings, it returns an empty string. And here it says that if iterable is specified, the tuple is initialized from iterable items. Iterable consider, for example, lists, sets, and all these items that are combined of sequences. For now, we consider them to be iterables. They are iterables, but iterables can be more than that. But for now, till now that we have learned, for example, how to use lists and sets, we can say that those are iterables. So here I passed in a set, and it is an iterable. It is a sequence data type, so it simply converts it to tuple. And the same can be applied, for example, converting a tuple to set, as you can see here. And the output, we've got two 10s, two 10 numbers here, as we learned in previous videos. Sets contains only unique values, so one of the 10s are going to be removed. And as you can see here, there's only one. 110. And the same goes on for list. You can convert lists to a set using a set class. And let's see some errors. So let's talk about some conversion errors. Here, value error. Consider you want to convert an integer, convert a string that is not convertible to an integer. Like for example, 4.5. It is not convertible to int because it is not int. It contains this period that int class cannot convert it or does not comprehend it. So it says invalid literal for int with base 10. It says value error because there's a problem with the value you pass to this class. So whenever you see, you're going to see value error a lot, I think, while you're doing your Python projects. But in this case, when you are converting, if you see a value error or if you encounter a value error, just remember that the value that you are passing to the conversion class, or we can call it meta function here as well, it is not valid. So you have to change the value. And another error that we are going to talk about is type error, that we have already talked about it, but let's put it here as well. Consider you got a list which contains an integer and a list. So it is a nested list, kind of a semi-nested list. So as we talked about it, we cannot pass arguments to a set which are unhashable, okay, which is unhashable. Here we are asking set class to convert a list which contains an unhashable type. So it returns it raises a type error. It says your the argument, the items that you are passing, some of them are unhashable, and one of them specifically is list. So if you encounter this one, you can simply understand that your values are not valid, and simply you can just change this list to tuple, this inner list, okay, not the outer list, because the outer list will simply is simply an iterable, and set iterates over it, okay. Set does not try to convert it to sets, just the items inside of it. So instead of this, you can simply convert this list. If you face this error, you can simply convert this list to a tuple and the problem will be solved. So let's talk about how to convert a list to a dictionary. So first of all, let's think, is it possible to convert a list to a dictionary or not? As we know, as we all know, dictionaries are key value based sequence data type, okay? They preserve key values. So is how we can convert a list to a dictionary. As you can see, if you want to try to convert a list to a dictionary, simply returns a value error because your value is not valid, simply. This value does not imply anything. It is not similar whatsoever to any kind of key value per data sets, okay, data. So simply it returns a value error, and it helps the programmer and says dictionary update sequence element 0 has length 4, 2 is required. What does it say? It says if you want to convert a list or something like a list to a dictionary, the items in the first index, okay, the first index, its length should be 2. Why 2? Because we want a key and a value, okay? So it says its length should be 2, not 4. So let's check the item at index 0. As you can see, at index 0, we've got Iran, and its length is 4, not 2. So it simply says if you want to create a key value pair, the items at the first index, and definitely the second and the third, should have length of 2, not length of other than 2, okay, whatever it could be. For example, here, if I remove n, it's going to say its length is 3, not 2. So just, okay, let me bring it back. So how we could solve it? For example, here I want to create the capitals that we had, the same variable of capital that we had. So I'm gonna follow the note that it says, the instruction that it says here. I'm going to simply use tuples. As you can see, the item at the first index and the second index, both of them have 2. Both of them are length of 2, as you can see here. So here, there is a notion of key and value. Okay, so whenever you are trying to convert a data type to another data type, you have to think about the concepts and the representation of each data type. The representation of dictionary is key and value. So your data that you are trying to convert should have the same representation as well. Definitely not the same, should follow the same notion, okay? There should be a way you can see the key and values. As you can see, we can see keys and values here. The first item could be representative of keys, and the second items are representative of values. And dictionary doesn't return an error and simply converts this list to a dict. So if you want to convert a list or tuple to a dictionary, yeah, here we've got an example of a tuple. Simply, you should follow the instruction, and your items, each of them should have 2 values. The first one is key, and the second one is value. The first one is key, and the second one is value. And the reverse is possible. If you want to convert the dictionary to a list, simply take the items, and I think we talked about items in the previous video. Item simply creates this one, or this one, doesn't matter. It returns your values in a list or in a tuple that each index contains another sequence data, another tuple. Each index contains a tuple, definitely. Each index contains a tuple which has 2 values. The first one is key, and the second one is a value. So that's it for data conversion. If you have any question, please feel free to comment them, and I'll check and answer as soon as possible. So like always, please consider to subscribe the channel and introduce it to your friends. Till the next video, have a good day.